You're listening to International Education with Cal, a podcast brought to you by Learn International that is dedicated to connecting global citizens. So I'm Eleonora, and your host for this week's episode about the great potential that the city of Howth in Ireland can offer us. And welcome to International Education with Cal. So today I'm going to be chatting with Shane O'Doherty, CEO of Humble Pilgrim Ltd., an organization which is devoted to conserving and protecting the wilderness and habitats of the Howth Peninsula and the UN Dublin Bay biosphere, and also a guide for Shane's Howth adventures. So Shane, it's a true pleasure to have you here with us, and thanks a lot for having joined. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Eleonora. Good to talk to you, and I look forward to welcoming your visitors to Howth someday.
Yeah, thank you so much. So let's start with a small introduction about what you generally do, your main occupation, and how Shane's Howth adventure is born. So let's talk about that.
Well, I was in the airline industry until about 2015, and I decided that I needed to do something different with my life and come home to my own community. And I had learned from all of the travel that I did that most of what I found most interesting and exciting in the outdoor world had been around me all my life in my own neighborhood. Now there's pressure from development here, there's pressure from everywhere for progress, and I decided that I would spend the rest of my working life protecting the wilderness and the habitats and the history and the culture of my own community for the future by sharing with as many people who might recognize, respect and love it as I could. And so Humble Pilgrim was formed, and Shane's Howth Adventures became the kind of like the brand by which we began to share the biosphere and the history and the community and habitats with visitors who came from all over the world.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually, because as we said before, Howth is not that big city, and maybe you can elaborate a bit on that. So where it is located and like the story of this place, which is really interesting because you have decided to found the Dublin Bay biosphere. So why, the main reasons why, you can tell us about it?
Well, Howth itself is a peninsula connected by a small tambola, which means it's almost an island, and it's the north shores of Dublin Bay. And Dublin Bay is the UNESCO Dublin Bay biosphere, and I think it's the only capital city that is also part of a biosphere. Now, Howth has had people for about 10,000 years, which is quite a long time in Irish terms. And the peninsula is not really developed yet. And so all of the sites and the paths and the trails of the people for 10,000 years are still accessible. And that way you can walk the peninsula or sail or e-bike or climb or whatever way you want to enjoy the outdoors. You can do it through the footsteps of Ireland, Europe, and Dublin's history, which is an interesting history over the last 10,000 years.
Yeah, and of course, I think that we need to talk about the sustainable treasure that Howth offers to tourists. So why have you decided to protect this area? Which elements we need to protect, and why, the main reasons why?
Well, the UNESCO Dublin Bay biosphere has designated Howth as core zone. So it's like a worldwide standard of the cohabitation of people and nature. Now, it's also unique because as an island, of course, it has 360, almost 360 water. And on the south of the hill, we have cliffs, we have intertidal zone, we have beaches, we have grassland, we have woodland, and then on the north side, we have more beaches. We have an ancient harbour, which again goes back 2 or 3 thousand years. Um, we have the island of Ireland's Eye. We have gannet colonies. So it's a very precious nature reserve. And within a short period of time, you can go through many different delightful and kind of like surprising habitats.
Yeah, I visited the cliffs and they're really interesting because you can really see many different types of, let's say, flowers, of grass, of soil. So it's really nice to see, even in this small city, how nature grows freely, let's say that. And it's a pleasure to see, actually. Also, you said you talk about the Ireland Eye. So, can you tell us what is exactly the Ireland Eye and why we should visit it?
Ireland's Eye maybe sits about a kilometre off the coast. It is quite a historical island. Um, its name in Irish is Inish Macnessan, which means the island of the sons of Nessan. And the sons of Nessan were the first Christians, some of the first Christians in Ireland. They established a monastery on the island, and the ruins of it are still there, and the whole island is untouched. So you have this opportunity to visit what is like a 6th century Celtic Christian community, quite untouched. Now, they were then invaded by the Vikings, and Howth itself is a Viking name. It means head, which is what's on their charts. Eriu's Ui is the Old Norse for Eriu's island, and so the name itself is a Viking name. And before even it was Inishmagnessen, it was Inishballen, and it features in our old Celtic mythologies and legends going back, into the mists of the past. So it's a classic small island that you can reach very easily from the pier at Howth. And on the north side, there are European level seabird colonies that include gannet and cormorant and guillemot and puffin. And when you go there and you can't see the mainland, it could even feel like you're in the Galapagos or some David Attenborough, Blue Planet program.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And maybe is it possible to reach it by ferry, or am I wrong?
No, there are ferries from the West Pier. There's also kayaking, powerboating. Excuse me. There's a lot of different ways that you can reach it, but the ferries from the West Pier go through most of the summer. I think they go from April until October, and they run all day, and they run different types of cruises, and it's quite inexpensive, maybe like €20 a person, and they can take in the island and take in the cliffs and give you a nice eco cruise.
This is really nice. And what do you think? In which season is better to visit Oath?
Well, for me, I like the light. Like the two had and in the past, like the light. So, I mean, spring is really good, but each season kind of tells a different story. At the moment, we're well into July, and the ferns are perhaps growing most surprisingly, but the growth is so strong that it nearly makes you smile to see how aggressively everything is kind of fighting to take more of the light. And I think only in Ireland have we the combination of rainwater and sunlight that allows things to grow in such a surprising and actually kind of funny way. Now, the rhododendron, we have a Siamese jungle, which was imported from Thailand in the middle of the 19th century. And that is like something from Avatar. And that blooms most fantastically in kind of May. So each season has its own story and its own habitat, and it has its own effect on the landscapes. At the moment, all of the flowers that bloom purple are beginning to emerge all over the hill. Now, before the 21st of June, most of the plants that grow are yellow. So we're moving now from yellow to purple.
Wow, this is incredible. So let's say between spring and maybe summer, it will be really nice to see because of the sun and the weather, probably. So yeah, let's say spring and summer.
Yeah.
And let's change a big topic. So concerning the interesting legends and stories about Oath, I have read on your website, we have Imbolc, if I pronounce
Yeah.
it correctly, also
Yeah.
called Bridget's Day. So can you um, say something about it? Because I find it really interesting, really curious.
Well, in bulk now, that's in the Druids' time.
Hmm.
And so St. Bridget herself was kind of like Christianized, but actually she was a Druid goddess. And the Druids and the Tuatha Danann were the people here before the Celts, who were worshipped ultimately by the Celts and became the fairies, and they became the magic, and they became our underworld. They inspired Halloween that everybody celebrates, and they have left their names and legends all over the hill. Do you know we have a megalithic tomb here called Aideen's Grave, which you can visit and still sits. There's no fences or kind of protection for it, so you can still visit Aideen's Grave, which is older than the pyramids and would be from the time of Inbulk and Stonehenge, and all of that is still all over the hill. Maybe we have 18 different monuments on the peninsula from the era before even the Christians and the Celts came here. So St. Bridget was a goddess in that tradition, or Bridge was a goddess in that tradition. And the old name for Howth, the Irish name, is Ben Eadar, which means Eadar's peak. And Eadar was one of the figures in the pre-Christian tradition that went on to become the fairies and all of the mythology of ancient Ireland.
This is extremely curious, and probably there are some books about it that we can read. If you have
Yeah.
any suggestions about them, you can just tell us some title or.
Well, I have a library full of them actually.
Okay.
And there are books that would be about Howth, and then there are books that would be about the Druids or the Celts or the Tuatha Danann. And I mean, if you Google any of those things, you'll find a lot of material will come up. And then slowly piecing it together is kind of becomes a hobby or a research study that I've been doing since, well, since I was a boy, actually.
Yeah, this is incredible. So thank you so much. And to conclude our meeting, can you say three main reasons why a person should visit Oath?
Well, the community and the hospitality between people is kind of unique and exceptional because it goes back, you know, for a coastal town. As an Italian, anybody who lives in the coastal towns know that they have their own character and their own warmth and their own food. Now, Howth is like that. From a biodiversity perspective, if you like nature, all of the nature of Ireland is kind of accessible within 2 or 3 hours walk. All of the habitats and climates you can reach at Howth. And then finally, if you want to understand the history and the people and the culture of Ireland for 10,000 years, you can actually take it in through your nose, take it in through your mouth, take it into your lungs, and breathe and walk it. So those would be the three reasons. To
Okay.
be ancient Irish, to have all of the best kind of party and hospitality, and to enjoy the biodiversity and nature.
Okay, so thank you so much. Thanks
Okay.
for joining us for this episode of International Education with Howth, a podcast brought to you by Learn International. And please make sure to follow our various social media channels and subscribe to our podcast so that you can join us each week as we find connection with people from all over the world. So until then, stay safe, stay curious, and always stay adventurous.